All right, what up, Internet? We're back again. I am still saying I'm back here with my friend Skirmisher. We are here today to bring you a slightly different podcast than we have bringing. If you have subscribed to the channel or listened to the 7 people out there that do that, you have heard us talk about World of Warcraft in the past, and our last handful of podcasts were about that, and maybe in the future we'll do another one about World of Warcraft. But today we're going to talk about some video game centric topics. And we're going to try to expound on those and just talk about our experience with video games. So, have you been playing anything, Skirmisher? Have you been playing anything now? I know you're sort of off the World of Warcraft kick too. Have you been playing anything lately?
The last thing that I played video game wise, related to our current topic that we have here that we still haven't told anyone about, like it's a secret, was probably Battlefield 1. I was playing that on the PlayStation, but as far as online gaming, PC-wise, nothing real steady. I mean, I play some EQ actually every now and then. Yeah, free to play old man EQ. These video game nowadays are getting too sophisticated. Yeah, but I'm just doing that with a friend of mine. And we've been playing on that for a little while, on and off. Cool. Just fun stuff.
Cool. I've been still playing a few things. People that listen to the podcast or again follow the channel might see I post a lot of fighting game videos. I transitioned from Street Fighter, then played a lot of Dragon Ball Fighters. Really big Dragon Ball fan, so of course I had to give that a whirl.
Right.
And
incomplete timeline here of your games.
Exactly.
List them in order.
Exactly.
Weren't there a couple other ones in between Dragon Ball?
Yeah. I went back and forth between a few things and tried to play Marvel vs. Capcom, of course. And that was, of course, a flop now.
Yeah.
Although I love that game and I love those characters and I love that style of game, which is what really interests me in Dragon Ball too. Because now there's a game that I love the characters, and I also love fighting games. So it's this marriage of things, and Dragon Ball Fighters is great. Dragon Ball Fighters is not exactly my cup of tea, and I won't go into how I think the neutral's funky and all this stuff. But it's a fun game, and if you like fighting games, and then recently I started playing Blaze Blue.
Your fourth wife.
Yes.
Wow, fourth marriage here.
Yeah, and Blaze Blue is amazing. Now Blaze Blue it seems like sort of broken, and I don't know that I'm good enough at it or anything to really like say that, but I feel like they're going to have some trouble with some different things. But that game's amazing. Like the way they mixed in the anime characters, the way they mixed in the Unil characters, and all this stuff, and just laid it out there. They said, here you go, here's the fan service stuff, and then Arc Systems makes amazing games. So I say all that, so check out the YouTube channel. There's some ranked match videos on there.
Yeah, we're gonna have some new videos popping
up. But that leads us into the topic we're going to talk about today, because the one thing I have continued to play pretty much nonstop is competitive games. Still played a little bit of League of Legends here and there with friends, playing the fighting games, but I always seem to gravitate back toward games now that have a competitive aspect to them. Growing up, I played a lot of Final Fantasies, a lot of Mario Brothers, a lot of Zeldas, Metroids, and you can play those by yourself, and you're just challenging yourself. And then later on, when I got into fighting games, and now I find that I really like that. So games like League of Legends, games like the fighting games that we play currently are still the games that I play regularly. I'll pick up something every now and then, Dark Souls or something like that interests me, or Demon Souls or whatever it is. But the competitive aspect of games, that's what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about competition. We want to talk about how esports is affecting that competition. I used fighting games for the fighting game community is not quite all in on esports yet, and like I said, that's maybe a whole different podcast topic. But just you and I played some sports growing up, and have for a long time been competitive with each other on games, been competitive together versus others in games. And so that's what we want to expound upon today. We want to get into that topic a little bit and just sort of see what we think about it, and hopefully some of our views are sympathetic with the views of the people out there, or empathetic with the views of the people out there, because now that esports is becoming a thing, I feel like that's maybe not a hot button topic, but a current topic.
Right.
All right, so to get into competition, you of course have to relate it back to real deal gladiatorial sports competition. And you say real sports, and that turns people off when they like esports or one of the things that I hope to get into a little bit here is just the difference between sports and games. And when you get to sports, I know growing up, I played sports. I wasn't great at sports. I didn't play on college teams or anything.
Right.
But I enjoyed sports. I played them a lot. Played them in my yard. Played rec ball. Played friends basketball. I loved basketball. It was always my favorite. Then I would go in the house and I would play video games, and it was a very significantly different thing that I was doing. Then when you go to college and you start playing intramurals, different things in sports, and it changes. You get a little bit older. And then that's when fighting games became something where they had big competitions, and you could watch it on the internet. The inception of we're old enough that when I was in college, I didn't have internet at my house until college.
Right.
So going to a video game tournament was a new thing. They would have some on campus. We went to some out of town, and then my friends and I would play for money and stuff, and that upped the ante. So now it went from something we were doing for fun to something we were practicing and trying to get good at. And that word practicing, my family especially couldn't understand me practicing a video game.
Right.
They said, "What are you doing?" Well, I'm just practicing. Like, what are you talking about? It's just Mario Brothers. Just run and jump on the things.
Right.
And I said, no, I've got to learn how to do, jumping heavy kick into down, medium, fireball, into super, and I got to get that right. So it's this big difference. And then when they label it esports, I think that troubled some people in the beginning because they were like, "Oh, it's just a game." Of course, there's an audience of people our age too or the generation right before us that didn't grow up with video games that discredit it altogether. So I think that's the interesting thing they're trying to do. They're trying to brand that as that sort of thing. So do you think that that's a good thing? Do you think that's the right way to go for them, or what are your thoughts on that part of it?
Well, I think there are two parts of esports. I think the first part is related to branding. It was necessary for them to call it an esport because video games are already games. Everyone's used to that. So everyone's used to hearing video game, but video sports? I mean, when you think of a term like that, all people think of is maybe a video game that's a football game, like Madden,
right,
or basketball or FIFA game. That's what they think about when you say video game sports. When they put esports out there, they have to brand it because this is something for a much wider audience than most people anticipated. And when it starts off, we watch sports for different reasons. We like to see excellence that maybe we can't achieve or that we have achieved in the past, but maybe we've gotten older and we can't run the 100-yard dash the way it is. We get enjoyment from that, and it's always good to have a team to root for. You have these people now who watch esports who are engaged in these video games, whether it's RTSs, real-time strategy games, or shooters, or fighting games, which fighters were probably one of the earliest crazes with the Street Fighter series. You're well familiar with that. And when it kicked off that craze and people actually enjoyed doing that, when it got to the point nowadays where you have an online community in the internet, and it's so much more widespread because it's been around for years and years and years and years, that now people say, I really enjoy doing this, and maybe I didn't play football or maybe I didn't play volleyball, but I know Street Fighter. Street Fighter's been around for 20 years, and that guy there, like you said, can do heavy kick and a medium punch with a frame trap and a car throw and whatever technique that they can do, and they go, man, that's awesome how they can do that. I'm not that good, but I can enjoy how well that person plays because of their technique. So, but I think the whole sport thing, the people who are organizing it, especially with like free-to-play games like League of Legends and things like that, they're trying to pull in a crowd. They're trying to get an audience. They are trying to fill their virtual stadium, as it were. They still do these things in person at these gaming conventions in which the seats are filled and the crowd cheers, and it's just like any other sporting event, but also the appeal online, because the difference between esports and regular sports is that we don't go home and usually watch a football or a basketball game on our computers. Maybe we'll catch a highlight reel on our cell phones. But through these broadcasts, yeah, you can go home and watch the League of Legends tournament online or the Street Fighter tournament, and you're much more likely to find that in an online medium. So I think that's the first part, and the second part is probably, like you were saying, the making that difference between games and sports. So, I mean, I know you have your own opinions on what differentiates those two.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear you talk about online ratings. That's one of the sports shows that I listen to. The announcer of the show, he said, and I've heard him say it more than once, he said, if I have to cover esports, he said, I'll stop doing whatever show I'm doing. And he's never have. Like on his show, he doesn't, even on SportsCenter and stuff, they'll have stuff about big gaming tournaments.
Right.
And he said that. He said, I'll never do that. I don't think it's important. I don't think it's a sport. He's taken a stance, and it's a little bit older stance, but I understand it. It's not the gladiator games of old. And to hear you talk about online ratings too, to get back to that point, that's one of the things they talk about on a lot of the sports shows now. It's hard for them to define their ratings because of millennials and people who consume media now do it in a completely different way than you and I do. My son can get on his iPad, get on YouTube, and look up a video he wants to watch. And then if I have, if we're going on a trip, I can download an episode of his favorite show on his iPad and watch it. And we didn't do that.
Right.
We couldn't do that. My son doesn't know what commercials are.
Mm-hmm.
We fast forward through everything and DVR everything.
We had the little Tecmo football video games or whatever we had.
We were waiting for Saturday morning to watch cartoons.
Exactly.
Whereas my son will come in and say, but to get to the point though is that millennials and younger people are ingesting media in a different way, so it's affecting those ratings.
Right.
And if you put something out there that is dynamic for them, which is something like League of Legends or a fighting game, then that's what they're going to consume because maybe they couldn't play sports. But this is something that I guess is a little more universal because sports, you can't go out in your yard and play baseball. You can go hit or throw, but it's not like you got 9 people to go and play.
Right.
But to get into what you were saying again a second ago too about the difference between games and sports, I think there's a dexterity component, there's a physical component. One of the things that I argue about in an art class is I watched a presenter one time show a kid working on an iPad, and they said, okay, make the background green, and they touched the screen and made it green, and they said, now put a dinosaur on there, and they put a dinosaur on there, and the instructor said, this is how kids are going to draw. And as an artist myself and stuff, I raised my hand, I said, that kid's not learning to draw.
Right.
And they said, why? That person wasn't an artist, and they were really nice about it. They were engaging in a conversation, and I said, well, that kid is not building up the manual dexterity in his hands to draw.
Right.
Maybe I can work on an iPad and maybe I can't, but if you want me to pick up a pencil and draw apples that look like apples, that kid's not learning to do that. And then that's the difference for me between video games or games and sports. Chess, for instance. I said I play chess on my phone. I have friends that play and we go back and forth, but there's no move in chess that I can't perform. I never watch a tournament and say, oh my God, did en passant? I can't do that. I need to practice.
You could even say your moves out loud,
right.
Like queen to knight 3 or whatever,
Exactly. So. And so, but then I watch baseball, and a guy hits a home run, and I'm like, okay, I can't do that.
Right.
That's amazing. Hit a 99-mile-an-hour fastball, 500 feet. I cannot do that. Even on my luckiest day,
right.
I cannot do that. So I think that's a big differentiator. The Monopoly World Championship is a much different thing than the World Series, and I think that's sort of the disconnect because video games being targeted for kids when it come out, it was for a younger generation that grew up with that and still like it now. The same way I played basketball when I was 5, I played Mario Brothers when I was 5, and so now at my advanced age that I won't mention
right.
on the internet. I still like both of those things, and so there's an audience out there now, or there's a generation before us that says that discredits that because of that. That's a game, that's for kids, that's Monopoly. Whereas there's a guy on YouTube who makes a living playing League of Legends that's going, hey, this is a sport, this is what I do for a living, and I think that's murky waters.
It's new
for sure. It's definitely a new thing. All right, so talking more about competition and trying to get back to our limited show notes here, I want to talk about the different styles of competition within video games or esports, again, however you want to denote that, because One of the things I always find interesting is they do these interviews. There's a bunch of people in the FGC, the fighting game stuff, that I follow, and one of the things that comes up a lot when they're talking to people that play fighting games is, why don't you play League of Legends, or why don't you play this or that? And they'll say, I tried that, but the thing I like about fighting games is that when I win, it was because of me, and when I lose, it was because of me. And they like that. There's never their other guy on their team had a bad day and they lost, so it's all within themselves. And I've met athletes like that. I've met people like that. And those are probably the people that gravitate toward golf or tennis or single-player sports. Those same mentality people who maybe aren't as athletic are the people doing these sort of things. And I always found that interesting because I've always sort of liked a lot of that. Now, the one thing I will say I don't like, and we'll get into, is the randomness of it. Okay, we'll play League of Legends and they put me with 4 dudes I don't know. Now, dude 3 flames out and has a terrible game and I lose because of that. That's
right.
Annoying. But if it's you, and me and you are friends, and we have a competitive bond already, we have entered into this together, and you flame out and have a bad day, that sucks. But that is not the same thing as a random person doing that. And the same way in World of Warcraft. And this is what I want to get into. You got one-on-one fighting game or one-on-one competitive game. You've got group competitive game, group versus group. Then you've got single player versus the computer, which is Mario Brothers. And then you've got group versus the computer, which is World of Warcraft, right? And I love that stuff. I love, we play board games. What board games do we like? It's the ones where we play as a group versus the system. We don't play a lot of Monopoly or Sorry or anything like that, or
Right.
Candyland. We play Elder Sign, Arkham Asylum, and stuff like that.
No, it's Elder. It's
yeah.
Elder Sign.
It's Elder Sign now.
Arkham Asylum.
The second sign. And,
It's not second sign. It's Elder Sign.
But there was one Knights of Camelot, Shadows over Camelot, or something that was like that, and it was this competitive board game that we always really enjoyed. So maybe expound upon that point a little bit. For you, what is the difference? Because I know I've entered into all of those in real life and sports. I've played basketball. I've played pickup basketball. I've played group team basketball. But then I've also played golf or tennis or something that was just me. What is there one in particular that you enjoy, or is there? What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're on the right track when you talk about the differences between the player experience. I mean, when it comes to video games, people are always initially used to single player, and that's where you're competing against the CPU, the AI of whatever game that you're in, for good or for bad, and whether or not that's really simple to where it's an easily beaten game, or you're playing something along the lines of like the Dark Souls series, which has enjoyed much success just due to the fact that its difficulty is much, much higher, and players are rewarded by beating that game and they feel a sense of accomplishment. I get what you are saying about the team nature of it as well, though, especially being a single person in a group game. I can relate this to me. I wrestled when I was in school, and when you're on the mat, you're wrestling one-on-one. However, the points that you win for your match go towards your team score. So if you equate that into a League of Legends thing, hey, I'm kicking ass in the top lane. Why aren't you guys winning down there in bottom? Or, hey, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It adds towards your group tally. And separating those as to whether or not you know the people you game with or don't, that is going to affect your gaming experience, definitely. So there's different aspects to it. I think people will gravitate to what they like best. And some people will like a single player experience, such as a fighting game, where if you win because of you. And if you lose because of the controller, of course.
Right.
I mean,
right. Makes sense.
I mean, this is controllers. They
That's everything.
Bad internet connection and controllers. I don't know if anyone else shares that in common with myself, but that's my experience.
Yeah. And that's a hard thing for some people, because a lot of the sportsmanship, to jump a little bit back to the last segment, the sportsmanship you learn from playing sports as a youngster is what you need to play sports and enjoy yourself and be an enjoyable part of a community in esports too. The unfortunate part is there is a stigma again there where a lot of the guys that probably play esports maybe did not play regular sports because, you know, there's a kid who's not going to make a sports team or who does not enjoy going outside and being athletic, but he might be super good at video games because, again, there's a less intense physical component to that. We said in the last segment, is NASCAR a sport? Is golf a sport? Well, I say yeah, because there is a physical component to all those, whereas I think chess is maybe not a sport because of that. So I'm a guy who can't get on this team. I will never be the star running back. I will never be the star quarterback. But if I sit in my room and I click hard enough, you know, maybe I can be really good at this.
Right.
And I, you know, I said my son will go to a school where they might have a League of Legends team. Well, when I went to college, there was no such thing. Well, now there are school-sponsored video game teams because there's money in it. Because that's the answer to all your questions.
Right.
I always say is money. Why are there video game teams in college? Money. So I always found that I liked competing, and competition was something that was important to me. And I was, you know, we always call ourselves tryhards. We said we're tryhard. You know, me and one of my closest friends on video games, he told me, and if he's listening, he'll know who he is. He said, well, I posted it on Facebook when I beat Dark Souls. That was a big deal. And I said, yes, that was a big deal because that game was harkened back to an older time and an older, more challenging video game. But it also required you to learn. It required you to memorize. And it required your fingers to be able to do the manual things necessary to beat those games.
Right.
But I liked all of it. Again, I think the randomness is what I probably dislike in that. I didn't like random dungeon finder in WoW. Right? You play Warcraft, you get on there, you got 24 guys you don't know.
Right.
Sometimes it's the camaraderie and the sportsmanship, because if you're a bad sport and you're a bad loser or a bad winner, because that's a thing too, you might not gel in a sport. Now maybe you're the best one and that forgives a lot of sins, but if you can't deal with a group or you can't deal with a competitive aspect, then in real life it's harder for you to deal with sports, because people have said things to me on a video game that would be different if it was real. And I'm not saying I'm some bad dude or something. I'm just saying I would stop
no one
playing
would
with
insult you like that or troll you in real life. I think that's a legitimate point, but it goes back to the differences between the real sports and the video game sports. And this is what I pull out of it. Some people say that esports are only participated in by skinny nerds who can't make the football team. And that is the stereotype. That is not always true. You got those crazy muscle heads out there playing first-person shooters and things like that, just like any other things. I think what you brought up about the sportsmanship is an interesting point, because the esport environment is the only place in which it is self-regulating. And what I mean by that is you and I in school or in the Pee Wee League or in middle school, if we're playing in a sport and it's organized, we're going to have a coach there to say, hey, don't throw your helmet, you know, if you lose. Or, hey, shake the other opponent's hand after the game, tell them good game, don't be a poor sport. Or your parents do that, because it's part of the sportsmanship is part of the environment.
Part of sports.
It's a part of sports, and it's just as important a lesson as anything else you could be taught. And there's a character thing to that. None of that exists in the online community. And what I mean by that is if someone brings that into it, they learned it elsewhere. They didn't learn it online. There's never a time you can get to the end of the game, and if you've had a pretty good game, hey, good job, guys, you did okay. Hey, it's fine. But you're going to have those players who are not only poor sports towards the opposite team, but more lately and more likely, you're going to have someone on your own team actively working against your own team. And I think it's so important to have cooperation in competition. It's the basis of all team sports. And that right there, if you're a person who hasn't had that cooperation or doesn't feel like they have a cooperation, then you're more likely to say, okay, well, I'm going to go and play a first-person competitive game, like a racing game online with someone and race against them and play my equivalent of Mario Kart, or I'm going to play an online team game like a Madden tournament in which I have a team that I'm using, but I'm the only one at the controller, versus, hey, I might be good at this first-person shooter, but now I'm in a squad, but my squad sucks, and they're the reason that we're losing. So I'm going to do that. And you can equate that to League of Legends and things like that. But I think the sportsmanship element is key, and the toxic environment of not having the good sportsmanship is why online games in general get a bad reputation. Very similar to if you watched every game and the bench cleared at every fight, or people were pitching balls at the batter, or basketball, the benches were clearing, it was a brawl every night, people would pick up on that. So,
well, and that's one thing about the regulations you talk about, which are awesome, because if you watch esports on TV, you know that's regulated. Okay, let's say there's an esports competition on TBS, and I'm watching the fighting game, and the one guy gets it up at the other guy and cusses him out, like would very regularly happen in an online environment.
Absolutely.
They would kick him out, right? Because there are regulations.
And that's money he's lost.
Right. So but one of the things I always thought was interesting about League of Legends, or a lot of those games, think that it's more important for you to try to win than for you to have a good time or enjoy yourself or enjoy the people you're working with. Because for many people, it is much more fun for their teammate to lose because they're mad than for them to win.
Right.
That's bad sportsmanship.
Right.
Right? And so there's no regulation for them. So now they get on there, they call you a name, they call you something mean, they make you lose the game or contribute to you losing the game. Maybe you're the reason you lost the game and they really have a valid reason to be mad, but they're still handling it in such a poor way. I don't know. I have a big problem with that, and I think it's why I've gravitated to single-player fighting games or group games. Because what have we always said about League of Legends? Let's get 5 and play. Right? What do we say about Warcraft? Let's get 10 and do our own thing. And win, lose, or draw, we walk through the fire together as a group. And it was never me and you and Darkslayer 76 who lagged out in the middle of a fight, who flamed out in the middle of a fight, who got in an argument with, this other person.
The more organized it is, the less of that bad behavior you have. If we were to go to the basketball court in a pickup game, and there's 4 of us or 5 of us and sitting there, and the game isn't going well, it's not unexpected that even on our own team, we're going to trash talk each other and say, man, you let that guy shoot on you like that? Get your hand in his face, block a shot. I mean, what are you doing? However, it very rarely devolves into the, well, you suck, and let me add on a couple other descriptions and some hypothesis about your parentage and all that. So that exists in real life, and that's frustration based. That transfers to anything, but the more organized it gets, the less of that you have, because that behavior isn't rewarded.
Well, that circles back to the what we were saying. It's more testosterone based too, because that is manly, and that is again gladiatorial, and there's an understanding between us that we are committed to something. To where if you started saying those things to me, either I'm going to disengage or we're going to disengage from you. Again, I don't want to talk about fighting or anything like that, because again, I'm not somebody that's been in fights or wants to be in fights or anything, but it would self-regulate itself. You cannot do that. If Graves is in top lane, running it down, feeding on purpose, you would not play with him on the basketball court. They would in some way, somebody would fight you, or somebody would cuss you out, or somebody would kick you off the team, or we would just stop, because it's a different thing. And I think that's one of the disconnects too from athletes or older people from esports. And to segue into the next topic, we just connect with this one. It also has a lot to do with cheating, like the regulation. They want your money more. Okay, it's really hard we used to play Final Fantasy 11, and on Final Fantasy 11, and we're making a pretty big segue here, but we're keeping with the sportsmanship and competition theme. In Final Fantasy 11, we were a group. We had like 30 or 40 people who a lot of them I was very close to. Some of them I still talk to today. Those people worked in conjunction with me, and we tried to complete goals. But every now and then, we were in a room with another group, and that other group was trying to complete the same goal. Okay? So there's this dragon would pop up, and the first person to tag him got him and got to fight him and kill him and get the special armor or whatever. Well, some groups would cheat. They would go in and they would change the file name of the dragon to a little tiny like apple or block or something, so it would load way faster on their computer, and they would tag it faster than we would. When we found people in our group doing that, we kicked them out. They were botters or spammers, whatever the word was back then. We said, we're not cheating. We're going to get what we want to get on purpose. That goes back to my sports background. It's like StarCraft, map hacking. How do you feel good about winning if you map hacked?
Right.
How are you like, did you see my StarCraft records? Really good. I map hack. Do you really feel good about that?
Right.
So the same thing in that game, but...
You're going to have to do a whole episode. People are going, map hack? What's that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes, StarCraft, you can map hack. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Check the show notes.
Yeah.
But we kicked people out for cheating, whereas other people embrace cheating because the people at Square, most likely, and again, I don't know, and I'm not a businessman or anything, but if they kicked out everybody that was cheating, they would lose a lot of their subscription base.
Right.
And unless it got to the point where they were losing, it's the old the old Fight Club equation. You know, you take the accidents, and you take the lawsuits for the accidents, and if that's less than what it would take, then we don't do a recall.
We don't do a recall.
Right. So it's the same thing. Where there's a lot of people cheating and a lot of people mad about it. But do we lose more money by kicking out the cheaters or losing the people that are mad about the cheaters?
Right.
And it's the same thing, but in sports, again, it's regular. If you cheated in sports, if I just double dribbled over and over in basketball, it would regulate itself. They wouldn't play. They wouldn't deal with me. So again, I think there's some of that. If you get into esports and you're on TV, it's regulated. It's more like a real sport. But if I log on to League of Legends tonight, there's a lot of people on there who aren't following that code of honor.
Exactly.
So I think that makes it tough for me. I wonder if a lot of the problems is the being grounded in sportsmanship makes something more of a sport, makes it more of a mano and mano. Even if it's not me and you fighting, like boxing, because that's very manly. Even if it's me and you competing at Street Fighter, it's still mano a mano, and as long as it's fair, I still get that same Bushido, like we competed in a competition and you did well, and win or lose, I can enjoy the competition. I don't enjoy losing. I don't think a lot of competitive people enjoy losing, but I can have a good game and lose.
I think it's avoiding some of the negatives that you would get in something else that people watch, but I don't think either one of us would consider a sport, like playing cards. If we watch the poker tournament, that's a very intellectual thing. The manual dexterity of my hands has nothing to do with what my hand is. I'm flipping my chips, but that doesn't increase the chances I'm winning this hand. So those guys get sour at each other sometimes too, because either A, they were outsmarted and they're flexing their aggression and whatever it is. Really? You called me with a pair of twos? You're such an idiot. And then the other guy is saying, hey, I bluffed you out of the pot. And that's their way. I think that sort of mental competition, when you mix it with anything, whether it's real sport or an esport, you're going to get that result. Now, I know right now you are playing Diablo 3, and that is a game that is primarily set up as a single-player experience. However, Blizzard has introduced certain competitive aspects to that game in the seasons and in the rifts. What do you think about that?
Remember, Blizzard, we talk about your games a lot.
Oh, sorry. Maybe
so if you want to sponsor our podcast.
Do we have to say Blizzard Activision?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. But to your point, okay, one of the greatest games I ever played was Diablo 1, right? Sony PlayStation.
Oh,
PlayStation 1.
PlayStation 1 is where you played it?
Isometric. Me and one of our friends, one of the people that we make listen to this, Ujibinu, me and him literally till the sun came up many mornings playing Diablo 1.
I think I played that on Windows 95.
Serious. Friendly fire. I was throwing fireballs and hitting. I was a wizard then. And it was just an amazing loot grind experience. I played by myself. I played co-op with him. And I played that game. I don't even know how many hours I logged. I still say probably Street Fighter is probably the most I've ever played a game. Final Fantasy 11 is probably somewhere way up there with WoW, and then Diablo's got to be somewhere in there. Diablo 2 comes out, same thing, amazing. Now I feel like dropped the ball a little bit with Diablo 2 down the line a little bit. The same thing, loot grind, single player, play with friends fine, play with a group fine, but I could sit down and just play that game. And then Diablo 3 changed.
Yeah, what's the difference?
Okay, first off was Auction House.
Oh, man.
Right? Auction House made it a different thing.
Do a whole program on the Diablo 3 Auction House.
Right. YouTube made it a different thing. Auction House made it a different thing. And then a leaderboard. So now, instead of us making new content, they made a competitive angle and said, okay, so no longer do we have to come out with Dunes of Argoth 3 for you to explore. We're just going to say, what rift can you do?
Right.
And then they do the seasons, so they take your gear away. And then they do all the classes and like smush them all together. So I got a whole, again, that's a whole nother podcast on my problems with Diablo 3. But I think it's interesting that they turned that game from a single player experience into a competitive experience without too much change. You can still log on there and do a lot of the same things. But I don't like getting on there and trying to figure out, I never played that game trying to say, okay, well, my wizard can get to level 7 of this, whereas yours can't. It was, did you see that sword that dropped?
Right.
Did you see that piece of armor that I got that's amazing that I've never seen before? And I think they took some of that out of Diablo, and I don't like it. I play it. Blizzard games are amazing. Their production value is through the roof. But I think they make mistakes like every other company does, and I think they have gotten into a new thing. I think they've gotten into I don't even want to say like a millennial thing, but microtransactions,
right?
Seasons,
right?
Leaderboards. That's what's driving gamers right now because of esports, because of everything we just talked about for all the last little bit. That's what's driving video game sales right now. League of Legends is free.
Right.
You know? It's a free video game.
So they're looking for a revenue stream on the back end.
Right. So now they're saying, okay, well, we're going to charge you $60 or whatever for our game, but catch us in season 2 with that different pet. Catch us in season 3 with this different cosmetic upgrade. And that is never what I played that game for. I think of speed running sometimes because it reminds me of that. I played an old video game called Shadowgate on the Nintendo.
Right.
And I remember timing myself like with my mom's egg timer in the kitchen and seeing how fast I could beat Shadowgate. And now, as an adult, I watch YouTube and I see good games done quick, and it's amazing.
And they do those for charity runs,
exactly,
for the skill in them.
And it would be like that if they came to me and said, "Okay, you can keep playing Diablo 2, but time yourself every time and post it." I'll say, that's not really what I wanted to do this for. So it took that all away. So I think sometimes adding that competitive aspect and making a game viable in that way takes away from this, because I wouldn't want to play Dark Souls for that reason. I wouldn't want to play Mario Brothers for that reason. I don't care about. You know what's funny though? Now that I say that and just thinking about this, but wasn't it cool when I was little to play Miss Pac-Man and get first on the leaderboard to put my initials in? Yeah. So now thinking about that, that's interesting.
It goes all the way back.
Yeah,
it's been there from the start.
Right. So I think I don't like it as much now because I don't want to mix the two. I don't want my single player experience to be the same thing as my my competitive experience, if that makes sense.
And I think it's very hard to do that, as I stated earlier, in an age in which we have an online community.
Right.
And when you have a game such as Diablo 3, which is a single person game, but which requires an internet connection,
right.
Even if you wanted to play it offline, you only want to compete against the computer generated monsters. You cannot play that game unless you are logged into the Battle.net. And that is a huge difference between us going home after school and playing Super Mario. And it doesn't matter if Nintendo headquarters has a power outage and their servers go down, which didn't exist back then, and now, where you are forced to be in an online community in which you're connected to those people and have exposure.
And they throw it in your face too. You log on to the Blizzard thing, and there it is. New pet season 7.
Yes, new pet.
Fire, flame, this.
Yes.
We have a friend who's into that. Like our one friend, he loves those cosmetic
Yes.
pets and stuff. I'm thinking.
And with what you were saying about the rifts, that serves a couple different things in how I look at it. Whereas we have that friend of ours that we're talking about who goes in again for the pets and the things that they release in the new seasons. I think the Rifts, which is a level that's made out that you have to speed run through, is competition not only against yourself because you're trying to beat your own time. However, you're also competing against your friends that you bring online with you. So you could still have cooperation in the game, but even with friends, we'll compete with each other. Oh man, you got that gear combination and you're just slaying stuff and I'm over here and I don't feel like I'm doing a whole lot of stuff. And if you go through a few rifts like that, you can have one guy who continues to play without you and level up his stuff. And then when you guys meet later on tonight and say, hey man, log on, I'm going to show you my newest trick and how I can get through this rift that you couldn't make it through before, or we couldn't make it through before. So the self-competition, I think they have to do that from a retention standpoint. They have to retain their players and try and expand it like that. So that's how I look at it.
Well, players' attention spans are shorter, and esports is a thing, and resisting that change, we make a lot of comments that could be a whole other podcast, but the resist to that change from somebody even like me from an older gaming standpoint, I always think it's interesting because that's not hashtag not my video games. You know, my
Right.
video games were something different, and now they are turning into something completely different. And my son's video games will be something entirely different. They'll be Ready Player One stuff. You know,
Well, publishers are doing it from a point of view where they're marketing that. When game designers come out with something, they are thinking about that now. When Diablo 3 first came out, I very seriously doubt that Blizzard was thinking, how can we turn this into an esport? But there are plenty of companies out there that say, hey, this game has esport potential. We can design it this way. It's like one of those, battle royale games, and we can get a bunch of people and throw them into an arena. We can have people watch it, and then it narrows down to one.
We said we weren't talking about Fortnite. I'm not doing it.
We didn't give any stipulation. No, I'm just saying there are certain games where, from a design perspective now, instead of a gaming company say, hey, I have this great concept for a game, and this is going to be the gameplay, and it's going to have this in it and everything, there is a part of that bulletin board or that whiteboard where all those ideas are thrown up to it. And I relate it to Hollywood and movies, where the director says, hey, and the writers and the people who do the screenplay say, I have this great idea. And then the production company comes in and says, how are we going to make money off of it though? And they go, well, we're going to sell this game and it's going to be great. And we can sell it at full price retail, $60. And they go, how are we going to make money after that though? And it's a little question mark that is on that whiteboard. And I think more and more games, as you said, are going to be developed that way to where your son is going to have a totally different experience video game wise than what we had. So there's that.
All right, so to bring it all back around, the whole reason I wanted to make this podcast is because playing WoW, playing fighting games, playing these things, I've seen the landscape change, and I'm hoping that some of our thoughts today mesh with some of you guys' thoughts, and really, hopefully, some of our thoughts have made you think about other things and made you say, oh, well, that's why this, or that's why I think this, because I think when I listen to podcasts, that's what I like, when it sort of makes me think about things in a different way, or I hear ideas from people. So our thoughts, I hope, help you, our listeners, define your thoughts, and I hope you find it interesting. I appreciate you coming out today. Actually, we're on location. I appreciate me coming out today. Where's your place today? So,
No problem at all.
And maybe down the road we'll find more to talk about. Maybe when Battle for Azeroth comes out, we'll dip our toe into that maybe, and then we can go back to our original group of listeners on that. But there's a couple of more we want to do. But I just appreciate everybody coming out. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Come back for more. Check out the fighting games. We're going to try to do some more battle reports. We're sort of all over the place.
Got some Blaze Blue coming.
That's right. Got more Blaze Blue. If anybody wants to play Blaze Blue Cross Tech, no. But just like our podcast today, we're a little all over the place, but I liked our thoughts on it, and I hope you did too. And I just appreciate everybody out there listening. We'll see you next time.